When people debate the Beatles' greatest songs, the conversation usually revolves around personal favorites. Some listeners point to the raw energy of Twist and Shout, others choose the emotional beauty of In My Life, while many believe Strawberry Fields Forever represents the band's creative peak. But greatness and historical importance are not always the same thing. Some songs become legendary because they are masterpieces. Others become legendary because they permanently change the course of popular music. In the Beatles' extraordinary catalog, a handful of recordings did both. These were the songs that didn't simply top the charts, they transformed the band's reputation, influenced generations of musicians, and helped establish the Beatles as what many still consider the greatest band in history. Without these songs, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr would almost certainly still be remembered as one of rock's defining groups. Yet these 4 recordings elevated them beyond mere superstardom. They became milestones that reshaped the music industry and redefined what popular music could achieve. Here are 4 Beatles songs that played an essential role in cementing their unmatched legacy. Number 1. I Wanna Hold Your Hand. By late 1963, the Beatles had already conquered Britain. Hits like Please Please Me, From Me to You, and She Loves You had established them as the country's biggest musical phenomenon. Their songwriting was improving rapidly, and Beatlemania was reaching extraordinary levels across the United Kingdom. Then came I Want to Hold Your Hand. Musically, the song wasn't a radical departure from what Lennon and McCartney had already been writing. In fact, many critics argue that both Please Please Me and She Loves You are equally strong or even superior from a purely songwriting perspective. What made I Wanna Hold Your Hand so significant was its perfect timing. Released just as America was looking for something fresh following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, the single exploded across U.S. radio. It became the Beatles' first American #1 hit and sparked a cultural phenomenon unlike anything the music business had ever witnessed. Its success paved the way for their legendary appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show in February 1964, watched by more than 70 million viewers. Overnight, the British invasion was underway, forever changing the relationship between American audiences and British artists. No British act before the Beatles had broken America on such a massive scale. While it's impossible to know whether another early Beatles single might have achieved the same feat, history records that I Wanna Hold Your Hand was the song that opened the floodgates. It wasn't simply another hit, it was the record that introduced Beatlemania to the world. Number 2. Yesterday.
Yesterday, all my troubles seems.
By 1965, the Beatles were already evolving far beyond their early image as a rock and roll band. Their songwriting had become increasingly sophisticated, and they had proven they could write tender ballads such as If I Fell and I Love Her and I'll Follow the Sun. Then, Paul McCartney dreamed a melody. That melody became Yesterday, one of the most influential songs ever recorded. At first glance, Yesterday seems deceptively simple. The recording features only Paul McCartney's voice, his acoustic guitar, and a string quartet. None of the other Beatles perform on the track, making it effectively the first Beatles recording centered almost entirely around a single band member. At the time, this was highly unconventional. Rock groups were expected to function as complete units, with all members contributing to every recording. Yet, the Beatles ignored those expectations, proving they could follow whatever artistic direction best suited the song. Equally groundbreaking was producer George Martin's decision to arrange the piece with classical strings. While orchestral instruments had occasionally appeared in pop music before, Yesterday helped normalize the idea that rock musicians could borrow from classical traditions without sacrificing commercial appeal. The song inspired countless artists to experiment with orchestration, chamber pop arrangements, and more emotionally nuanced songwriting. Its influence can still be heard decades later across folk, rock, pop, and even indie music. More importantly, Yesterday demonstrated that the Beatles no longer intended to be confined by the conventions of popular music. They would write and record whatever they imagined. Number 3. A Day in the Life.
I read the news today, oh boy.
If one song best captures the Beatles at the height of their creative ambition, it is undoubtedly A Day in the Life. Serving as the breathtaking finale to Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, it remains one of the boldest artistic statements ever made in popular music.
Written primarily by John Lennon, with a memorable middle section contributed by Paul McCartney, the composition combines unrelated musical ideas into a seamless narrative. Lennon's dreamlike verses flow into McCartney's energetic recollections before building toward one of the most famous orchestral crescendos in recording history. The recording itself was unlike anything audiences had previously heard. Producer George Martin assembled a 40-piece orchestra and instructed the musicians to begin at the lowest note of their instruments before gradually climbing to the highest possible pitch. The resulting controlled chaos created a dramatic explosion of sound that perfectly matched the song's surreal atmosphere. It concluded with a massive piano chord sustained for nearly a minute, a simple idea that became one of the most iconic endings in music history. Beyond the song itself, A Day in the Life symbolized a larger shift occurring throughout rock music. As the closing statement of Sgt. Pepper, it reinforced the growing importance of albums as complete artistic experiences rather than collections of hit singles. Musicians increasingly viewed the recording studio not merely as a place to document performances, but as an instrument capable of limitless creativity. Countless artists, from progressive rock bands to alternative musicians decades later, would draw inspiration from the adventurous spirit embodied by this single recording. It proved there were virtually no creative limits left for rock music. Number 4. Hey Jude.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
By 1968, the Beatles were experiencing growing internal tensions. Personal relationships were changing, business disagreements were emerging, and the unity that had defined the band's early years was beginning to fracture. Yet amid this uncertainty came one of the greatest singles ever released. Originally written by Paul McCartney to comfort Julian Lennon during his parents' divorce, Hey Jude evolved into an anthem of optimism and emotional resilience. Its structure challenged nearly every convention of commercial pop music. At over 7 minutes long, it was almost twice the length of a typical radio single. Conventional wisdom suggested that radio stations would never embrace such an extended recording, but they did. Radio stations played it repeatedly, listeners embraced its uplifting message, and Hey Jude became one of the Beatles' biggest worldwide hits. Its unforgettable 4-minute Na 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 sing-along transformed concerts into communal celebrations and demonstrated that audiences were willing to embrace ambitious songs if the emotional payoff justified the journey. Commercially, the single dominated charts around the world. Artistically, it confirmed that the Beatles could still surprise audiences even after years of unprecedented success. Perhaps most importantly, Hey Jude arrived during a period when stories about the band's internal conflicts were beginning to overshadow their music. Instead of allowing those tensions to define their final years, the Beatles produced a song so universally beloved that it became one of the defining achievements of their entire career. More than half a century later, its closing chorus remains one of the most recognizable moments in popular music. Every Beatles fan could easily nominate 4 different songs for this list, and there would likely be strong arguments for each. Classics such as Strawberry Fields Forever, Tomorrow Never Knows, Help, or Let It Be all left an enormous mark on music history. Yet these 4 recordings represent pivotal turning points. I Want to Hold Your Hand introduced the Beatles to America and ignited Beatlemania around the globe. Yesterday expanded the possibilities of pop songwriting through orchestral sophistication and artistic freedom. A Day in the Life demonstrated that the recording studio itself could become a limitless creative instrument. and Hey Jude proved that even at the height of their fame and amid growing personal tensions, the Beatles could still unite millions of listeners with a single unforgettable song. Taken together, these recordings tell the story of a band that never stopped evolving. They weren't simply writing hit songs, they were constantly redefining what popular music could be. That relentless innovation is perhaps the greatest reason why, decades after their breakup, the Beatles continue to stand as the standard against which virtually every rock band is measured.